everyone, welcome back to Curio Stitches. This is season 2, episode 11. This is the Curio Stitches podcast, and I'm coming to you from the southwest of England, which is that way, maybe? Southwest? I can't remember if the video flips. Born and raised English, as you can tell from my accent. So this podcast is about me and what I get up to, knitting, designing knitwear, spinning, crochet, and lots of other little bits thrown in. Let's get back to me. So today is Friday the 6th of January. And I'm doing a Q&A episode today. Now, I posted about any questions you might want to ask on Instagram, and then I asked in last week's video as well, here on YouTube. So I'm going to be answering 7 questions today, if I can sort of fit them all in. And just to sort of make it a bit more fun, I'm going to be doing a different craft or activity or project, whatever, for each question. So I hope that's okay with you. So I am knitting on my oracle for this question number 1, which is from Vicky, and I'll put Vicky's name on screen. And Vicky wants to know, when did you learn to knit? So I was shown briefly how to knit when I was 8. It was in my local village primary school, and one of the ladies in the village, who was in the WI and a member of church, etc., came in, and we had to sit and spend an hour a week knitting on these just basic T-shaped pieces. So it was for a jumper, so it was just your basic knit one piece, knit the second piece, sew them up the side sort of thing. And it was just using scraps of yarn. Thinking back to then, it was all DK weight yarn, double knit yarn. It was all acrylic, and there was no black or white. And that was because it was going to orphans in Africa, and it was seen as racist to use black, and we weren't allowed to use white because we were white. It was all very strange. This was, back in the 80s. Yes, I'm that old. And I found it very peculiar at the time. But yeah, I wasn't taught to cast on. I wasn't taught to knit. It was just, I was taught to do the knit stitch. And it was just, do this until you get to the end, turn it over and keep going. And then I wasn't sure how to change colours or anything. It would be, let me know when you get to about this much. And you sort of tie on another one and keep going. It wasn't for maybe another couple of years, so 10 or 11, that I first saw my mum knitting. I knew she did knit, because a lot of my dad's jumpers and things were hand knit, and my mum's always very proud of that fact. I knit your dad this, blah blah blah. It's lasted 20 years, sort of thing. And I remember she had some knitting out, and I just sat and watched. And then I didn't knit again until I left home when I was 16. And my older brother, he and his wife were having a baby. So on a prayer and a whim, I went to the library and I got a knitting book, and I knew nothing about gauge or anything else. I basically just flipped through and looked at the pictures and read some definitions, and I was like, don't know what that means. Went to my local charity shop, picked up a ball of chunky, it was quite thick yarn, purple yarn, and some straight knitting needles that did not match the gauge at all, and I knit my brother and his wife a baby hat. Now it ended up looking very like a point because no one had shown me, I didn't have a clue on decreases or anything else. The only thing I remember doing was, or sort of remembering, was that you decrease when you're doing the shaping, and I just kept decreasing and decreasing and decreasing, and it was sort of getting longer and longer and longer, but it ended up not fitting anyway, obviously. But that was the first thing I properly knit that wasn't for this thing when we were in primary school. And then I suppose when I was 19 or 20, I still had said knitting needles and a scrap of yarn, and I wanted to learn again. And I remember just seeing a knitting magazine. I don't know what knitting magazine it was, because I bought it, I read it, I recycled it. But it gave me the bug to try and knit again. So when I got pregnant when I was 21, I knit a baby jumper. And I do actually have a photo of this first jumper that I knit. I'll insert it here. And I remember phoning my mum and saying, "Mum, what's a cable? And is it..." And I read out the instructions. And she said, "Yeah, you just literally move it forwards or backwards." And that was the only knitting learning that I got from my mum. It was a 2-minute phone conversation. And I didn't know that cables were supposed to be hard. I didn't know that purling is supposed to be difficult or any of that stuff that happens these days. It was just, I just did it and it worked, and I sewed it up and it fit, and I was absolutely delighted. And that was the first thing that I made that worked. I didn't actually knit myself anything for quite a few years. I'm going to say not until my late 20s. So yeah, the majority of my knitting was for my children as they were babies. And it wasn't even a maternal instinct thing like I need to dress my children. It was they look really cute and something hand knit. Because my mum couldn't knit at that time anymore because she had carpal tunnel syndrome. So I just did it, and I've not looked back since. So I hope that answers your question, Vicky. So yes, so question 2 is from Susan, who's Wild Cottage Island, and she says, "Do you have a favourite drawer in spinning?" And then she follows on with, "Do I have a favourite yarn, favourite fibre to spin, favourite breed?" So my favourite spinning method is short forward draw, but I do something which I've not seen anyone else do, which is I anchor it here so it doesn't put the twist in until I release. I don't know if that's a thing. It's just something that I helped find made my spinning more consistent. Where are you going, Bertie? I'm going to wake you up with a spinning, I'm sorry. So yeah, I have yet to be able to do a long draw, but for what I like to use my spinning for, which is primarily knitting, I'm not interested in weaving or anything else. It does me just fine. The fibre I'm currently spinning, I think, is either Corridale or Polworth. I think it's Polworth. But this is for my sock spin along with my woman. As for the favourite breeds, my top breed that I have spun is Shetland. Absolutely love Shetland wool. It's got a beautiful crimp, it's soft, you can do so much with it. You can spin it really well, wool or worsted. It holds up to lots of wear and tear, and yeah, you can use it as is. You can spin it, normally you can spin it without having to do too much prep beforehand. The most I've ever had to do with the Shetland is to give it a rinse. I've not had to scour it. I just spin it in the grease, so to speak, and then when I'm doing its proper soak, when it's spun up, that's when I just use wool wash on it. And I have found that leaving the lanolin in, because they don't produce a lot of lanolin, leaving that lanolin in gives you a nice soft yarn, and I love it. It also means that you get that sheepy smell, but it's not potent like you can get in a lot of fleeces. It's nice and delicate. So other sheep breed types that I do like are Falkland. I love a Falkland fleece, especially if they're like an accidental bicoloured or whatever. And I like Romney because it's soft and plump. And I love Corridale for the crimp. Corridale is amazing if you want to spin really fine, so lace weight, etc. So yeah. As for non-animal fibres that I like spinning, I have 4 which I absolutely love and will spin for the rest of my life. My first one is Tencel, which is sort of a tree silk, I suppose you could call it. It's plant silk. You can get it from trees. I think you can also get it from seaweed. And then I love spinning rose fibre. I like spinning pineapple, and now that's one that I discovered a couple of years ago. Pineapple fibre spins like silk, luster, sheen, whatever you want to call it. And I plan this year, because I've still got a couple of 100 grams of it, to blend it on my hand carders a little bit with just some natural fleece. Yes, but to get a sort of natural luster. It's Bertie curled up in the fleece. And then my last non-animal one that I like spinning is mint. Now, mint fibre is naturally, it's soft but it's slightly coarser, so that is really good, I have found, if you use it as 1 of 3 plies or even as a 2 ply. I am planning on making some fibre and mint socks this year to see how that holds up. So yeah, I hope that answers your questions. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy Bertie for a bit longer while he's more spinning. Oh, I am spinning on my very old Ashford E-spinner, which I got 12 years ago when they first came out here in the UK. If anyone's got any recommendations for a not too pricey e-spinner because mine is bit in the dust pretty much. I can still do plying on it, and I can still just do a plain yarn, but I would like to upgrade. I think I've been faithful for 12 years, and I'm sure that she wouldn't mind going part-time. So if you know of any good e-spinners, let me know. Question 3 is from Cary. Hi Cary. Who is My Wool Mitten Farm on Instagram and My Wool Mitten here on YouTube. And she asked, I'd love to hear more about your fibre and spinning journey. When did you start spinning? Did you teach yourself? So, ironically, I'm going to shoot myself in the face because just after my youngest child was born, I went into a local yarn shop and there was someone in there spinning, and I didn't know anything about hand spinning really. I mean, I'd seen it on television and things, but I was still in the not a clue stage when it comes to hand spinning, which is really bizarre because I grew up between 2 sheep farms, and every year I'd help with the lambing and everything else, but it was always just given to the British Wool Trust or whatever it was. And so I saw this lady spinning, and the shop owner turned and he said, "Oh, she's spinning, maybe you'd like that." And I said, "I don't understand why people spin when you can just buy yarn." Well, roll on 6 months and I had bought a spindle, a drop spindle. And I was very ill at the time. It was when I was at my lowest health-wise, and a few of you will remember me back then. I'm talking sort of 12, 13 years ago. And I really, really wanted to learn to spin so that I could spin some fleece, knit the fleece, and do the whole sort of process. Because I felt daft not knowing how to spin yet. You know, I was a country girl, etc. So I bought a spinning kit. I can't remember if it was from Hilltop Cloud or someone like that. And it was just a plain 1 ounce pine even, maybe. Spindle, drop spindle with a top well. And I started, and my first spin was absolute mess. I got plenty of twist in, but I over plied it so much that it felt like cheese wire. And then my dad put a little notch in the spindle for me so that I could stop it slipping so much, because I thought that that would help, and actually it did. Now I no longer have my first spindle, but the second spindle I found online was this one, and I treated myself to this as a step up. Now this is from LP, and it is a Cocobolo whirl with an oak shaft, and then it's got a vintage brooch inlaid in the top, and it's got a little notch here. And as soon as I got this spindle, it was a game changer. I started spinning fine and more consistently, and I loved it so much that I used that piece of fibre and I knit it straight away into a cowl, which I designed and sent to my friend Christina, or Christine. And she was local to me, and it was her birthday, so I knit her a cowl, and then I knit her a hat. And then I got another drop spindle, which was this one. Now this one I had commissioned, so it's olive wood and I think it's walnut, and it's got another vintage brooch set into it. And it was at that point that I realised that actually, as much as I love spindles, I wasn't well enough to keep spinning and holding it and blah, blah, blah. So we saw on, might even have been Facebook or something, because it was back when Facebook was still quite new. Or it may even have been in like the yellow newspaper that we used to get, diamond free ads or something, that someone was getting rid of a spinning wheel. And I didn't know anything about spinning wheels. And they brought it round. It had been living in a barn for about 10 years. And it was an Ashford traditional single treadle, covered in muck, absolutely filthy. And I took it outside and I literally scrubbed it and got all the muck off it, sanded off bits that needed resanding, oiled it, bought lots of replacement parts like the drive band, which was just a piece of cotton. It needed new leather for the treadle. It needed a new spring for the tension, because it was a Scotch tension. And I taught myself to spin on a wheel. Now, I didn't know any spinners at the time. I wasn't aware that any of you guys that knew me back then were spinners. I mean, Cary, I had no idea at that time that you spun. I knew you had sheep. I didn't know you spun. And I got hooked. And I still spin now. And it brings me so much joy and peace. And even if I don't knit with all my hand spun, it is definitely a shelf of admiration sort of thing. It's like I made that from start to finish. I have spun 3 sheep fleeces now, but I've given all that away because I didn't want to dye a whole fleece, and one of them wasn't great quality fleece. There was so many breaks in it and it was a real chore. And I think that one I actually just binned because it was not a great fleece to work with. So yeah. And then I tried using a bottom well spindle. Bottom well is not my thing. I've tried Turkish spinning on Turkish spindle. Abby in fact got me this one, and this is as far as I've got with it. I don't know why I don't get on with it so well. I'm going to keep persevering because I'm determined to spin at least this set of rolags on it. So yeah, and now I've got my Kiwi 2. I've had this one for, I'm going to say 6.5, 7 years now. Yeah, completely self-taught. Most of it was trial and error in the very beginning, because YouTube didn't really have spinning videos then. And I bought Respect the Spindle, which is an amazing book. I'll take a picture and put it in here. And then I bought, when it came out, the fleece book with all the different sheep breeds and things in, so you can sort of tick off what you've done and things. But yeah, I love spinning, so that is my spinning journey. I hope that was okay. Hi. So, question 5 is from, I think her name's Denise. I'll put you here. And she said, have you always been a crafter? As far back as I can remember, yes. In the first school I went to, from 3 years old, we were encouraged. It was a convent school, so we were encouraged to be creative. And although I don't remember exactly what because I was so young, we did do some sort of stitching or weaving, I think weaving. And when I was about 6 or 7, my dad made me just a box frame loom, and I did a bit of weaving on that. And then when I was 6 and my gran died, there was a lady in the village, and my mum was friends with her, and she sort of became my gran, and she taught me how to do embroidery and English paper piecing, and she became my Granny Rosie. And she, bless her heart, gave me sort of little things to do each week that I went around to see her. She was sort of, okay, today we're going to teach you how to do French knots and things like that. And so, yes, I have always been into crafting. From a young age, so primary school, or what you guys would in America would call elementary school, I had learnt to knit, I'd learnt to sew, I'd learnt to embroider, cross stitch. I hadn't learnt how to crochet because I didn't know anyone that could crochet. Crocheting didn't come till much later in life. I was a very keen artist, but that's a whole trauma thing. So I didn't pick that up again until much later in life, so in the last decade. But as for other crafty things, I have always been into pottery and painting, and loved gardening. Now I know some people don't call that crafting, but I was given, when I was very little, we lived out in the countryside, and I was given sort of a triangle of garden and told, you can do what you want with this. And I remember, you know, begging for cuttings and plants for my birthday, and I had some dahlias or dahlias, some petunias and things like that, but I did it in a colour gradient. So one end started as deep red and the other end was sort of through the oranges and yellows and into blues and purples, and it was beautiful. And I've always loved colour. Even when I was sort of 14 and sort of, I say accidentally became a goth, because I was going to a school disco and my sister came round. She's much older than me. And she went, oh, you're a goth. Did not go down well. And it stuck. But I've still always loved colour. Now, purple used to be my goth colour. So a lot of my crafting has always had purple in it. Or pink or black. Some greens. So that is very much my palette. So yeah, at the moment I am working sort of consecutively on 3 English paper piece quilts. I have got my box of pieces here. I've got nearly 1,000 here now, and I'm doing one for our bed, I'm doing one for my youngest daughter's bed, and the majority of these pieces are either from things that I had sewn. So for example, this one is a dress that I made, as with this one. This I bought specifically for English paper piece quilting. But I also made a project bag and some notions pouches. And then some of them, like this one, was from pyjamas. And then I have this one was some fabric that I got sent, as well as this one, this one, this one. And it's sort of, if I'm not crafting in some way, I struggle with my mental health, particularly with CPTSD. It helps to be soothing and productive, and stitching of any kind or painting, as long as I'm making, I'm okay. So I think that sort of ties in with the time scale of when things started going bad in my life. So yeah, for the last 36 years, I have consistently had something that I'm doing. So yes, I have always been into craft, and fingers crossed, I always will be, even with broken bones. I am improved enough that I can stitch again, which is lovely. So thank you for your question. Okay, so the next question is from Kate Hawthorne Cottage Craft. Hi, Kate. She asks, what inspires your crafting? Well, I would say almost everything, but it does fall into categories. So I have my art wall, so this one and this one and this one are my paintings, and I do a lot of painting. And then on this wall I have, this is my sort of plants and yarn and things, very much my relaxing space, but it's things like these grasses and things inspire me with textures, and then, you know, things like these pussy willows. Weird, I couldn't remember what I was called looking at them in the reflection, but I can when I look at them straight on. Anyway, yeah. And then leaves, and the moon is a massive influence for me. And I'm going to come over here and sit down. The moon is just so beautiful, and that's one of the reasons why there's some sort of representation in my knitting patterns, either in just the name or the actual design, like in the Moonology mix set, socks even, and hat, and the upcoming Moonology jumper. Yeah, nature is a big inspiration for me. And growing up where I did, in the countryside, I saw a lot of things that you can't directly translate into knitting. But it, you know, I grew up around the seasons and everything that comes with, so life and death, and, you know, finding dead creatures in various states of decomposition. So my love of skulls and things was never human skulls. It was never the creepy, gross horror side. It was more the biology from, you know, I saw these birds hatch in the trees in spring, and then a couple of years later, you know, the parents would be at the bottom of the tree sort of thing, and the ants would be all over it. And I know that sounds gross, I'm sorry. But that's why I love animal skulls. I just find them fascinating. Always have. You know, I've never bought one or anything else. So yeah, I have all of these things going on, and it sort of sticks in my brain. And I have a very busy brain. You know, part of it is ADHD, and part of it is the fact that my whole life I've been like a sponge for things like that. And so, you know, I have almost like a waiting list of things that I want to create. And sometimes new ideas will jump the queue. It'll be even something as simple as I'll hear the beginning of a song, and immediately I'm thinking in my head, okay, well, that's sort of a gossamer shawl. you know, sounds are very triggering, like for thought and creativity and things. It's like when I hear a car going past, I don't know why, but immediately it makes me think of grey socks. Grey socks. The electric cars, to me, are these bright neon stripy jumpers. Don't know why. They just go together. I'm looking at the wrong camera, I need to look there. So yeah, and then I will see just people walking around in what they're wearing or at the beach and things. And I'm sort of, I can make that, or that would be cool if it was like this. And, you know, I'm not as good a seamstress as I am a knitter. And so, I mean, a lot of my things that are coming out this year, fingers crossed, are started like that. So, it's like last summer I saw a lady wearing a caftan on the beach, and it sort of blew up in the wind, and it sort of created ridges in the breeze. And that sort of stuck in my head, and I came home and I drew it, and a couple of revisions later, and it's a written pattern that's hopefully coming out later this year. It looks nothing like the caftan, but it's the spark, you know. So yeah, that's sort of how my brain works. As far as yarn dyeing colourways and things, it's more memories of colours that I've seen, like a particular leaf or like season or feeling. Like the orange that I've got, it was meant to be sort of a mixture between foxes and cosy, like real sitting by the fire cosy. And it was inspired by both because my daughter loves foxes, as do I. And as I was dyeing, I was like, that needs to be warmer and cozier sort of thing. So that's how the Fireside colourway came out, you know. Everything is inspired for me. Even names, you know, it's sort of, I'll look at a list of names and one of them will pop out and say, okay, that's this colour, and this colour, or that needs to be that shade, or I'm very visual thinker. Yeah. If you want to know more, let me know. Thank you for your question, Kate. Hi. So I just recorded that last question and realised I didn't actually press record. So take 2 for the final question for this video. And it's from Cary, and she says, if you could travel anywhere for any reason, creative, memories, inspiring, whatever, where would it be? So while we're doing that, I am going to be doing some cross stitch. So I'm working on this fox for Neve. So I do have an immense desire to travel to different countries, primarily to places and people that I know or have met online, such as here on Instagram or via the YouTube channel. My top country above anything else is definitely America. I can't wait to actually come, and primarily, Cary, it is to see you, my love, because you are my oldest friend, friendship time-wise level. We've known each other for over a decade, and it would be wonderful to actually physically, you know, be able to hug or whatever and spend some quality time together and make some memories together, because you are a very, very special person to me. And then obviously there are places like Rhinebeck that I would love to go to. Because although we have yarn festivals and things here, they're nowhere near as big, and it would just be amazing to experience that. When I was younger, so maybe 10 years ago, I wanted to emigrate to Canada, and maybe one day still, depending on if I develop a skill that Canada needs, because the process for getting in is very strict, and I wouldn't want to not be able to offer something, if that makes sense. And then there are also things like I'd love to go and see the Amazon rainforest before it doesn't exist anymore. That has always been on my bucket list. I studied that in environmental studies when I was in high school, and I've never forgotten it. So that is definitely on my bucket list. So who knows? I might do a North and South America one day. I've never been interested in visiting places like Australia. It's never held a lure for me, I suppose. A lot of places, it would be fun to experience, but it's the whole, it's, you know, between 24 and 26 hours away from me on a plane, and I do not have that in me, health-wise. So, you know, I think an overnight plane is fine. But yeah, I lived in France, so I've sort of ticked my French thing. I still would really like to go to Spain. I want to go to Madrid and Barcelona especially. I'd really like to go there. I want to go down to the Pyrenees. Yeah. So that is all that I'm interested in doing, really. And living in England, everything is sort of, you can get there on a train within a day. Scotland is 12 hours away from here. But apart from the Edinburgh Fibre Festival, I'm okay with not doing that. Yeah, I think a lot of it, let's move the camera back up. Okay, sorry, my camera holder snapped. I'll fix it later. A lot of the places that I want to travel will have to stay a dream because I'm not physically well enough, which is fine, you know. Someone else can do it and let me know. But yeah, I've lived abroad. I've lived in England. I've lived in London. As much as I'd like to go back and live in London again, it is too big, it is too dirty, with my health as it is. If I was younger and healthier and a better immune system, yeah. By dirty, I mean, like because of COVID and things like that, it's much safer for me and my immune system to sort of stay here. I would love to go to Alaska. And sort of, you know, go in the forests up there and all the lakes and things. I'd like to go anywhere that there's a lot of snow, if that makes sense. Finland is definitely on our list. Myself and Abby, we really like to go and see Finland. So yeah. I hope that's okay. Bye. I hope you all enjoyed those few questions. Next week I will have some actual projects to show you. I hope to get a lot further on my oracle jumper, this beauty. And then I have got a couple of test knits that I finally made some decent progress on. This is healing, it's healing, touch wood. Yes. And I know it's healing because it's not as painful. There's still a lot of things I can't do. Ironically, things like opening a bottle of water I can't do because I can't hold it. But anyway, but the swelling has gone down, so now I can feel, I've got really bony wrists, so I can feel this bone digging in, and I can feel this bone digging in, and like, whereas the swelling before sort of kept it okay, I've come to realise quite how cramped my hand is, so I can't, like, it's almost like my knuckles on this hand are slightly that. Yeah, that's what happens when you have to hold your hand like that. Your little finger one just gets squishy. Not complaining. They did a marvellous job putting this new cast on for me, so, you know, go the NHS. Didn't pay a penny. It's lovely. We don't in the UK unless you want to go private. But yeah, so thankfully now it's healing. My knitting ability has come back and I'm able to knit things back to gauge, not realistically, reliably to gauge. So next week I'll be talking more about the oracle jumper, which I'm knitting, the Morticia sweater, which I have been test knitting for Joanna, and the socks, which I am test knitting for Mary. And then hopefully I'll have some cross stitch and some spinning to show. But we shall see. Maybe use some crochet, because I didn't do any crochet today because I needed another question. So yeah, look after yourselves. Enjoy the weather wherever you are, even if it's raining and cold. The planet needs it. And yeah, look after yourselves, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.